Have you ever Googled your own name? Prepare for a shock because your personal info, including addresses and phone numbers, is all out there. It's all harvested by data brokers and sold legally. Aura is a personal digital security service that scans the internet for your sensitive information and provides a full suite of privacy-enhancing tools. For a limited time, Aura is offering listeners a 14-day free trial at aura.com/safety. That's AURA.com/safety to learn more and activate the 14-day trial period.
This is a Shares for Beginners quick tip. Essential lessons. Questions answered.
Shares in a company are like slices of pizza. But how can you find out the correct number of slices? In this quick tip, Claude Walker from A Rich Life talks about how the investors who succeed learn from their mistakes, build up their knowledge base, so they can invest with an advantage over others who don't put in the same amount of work.
So I've been lucky enough to have people share their journeys with me quite a bit because I publicly talk about my journey, and humans are reciprocal beings. So when I go and talk about my successes and failures and how I've progressed as an investor over time, I get people sharing the same thing back at me. So this is no scientific survey. This is just what people have told me over the years. And I can see that the biggest predictor of success is whether people are willing to invest in their own knowledge and understanding as an investor. I get people approach me with all sorts of things, but two extreme examples are, your mortgage broker who's heard some stock tip on Hot Copper and he says, "Oh, mate, hey, what do you reckon about this stock?" And I can see from the ticker it's, some very speculative stock. I wouldn't even want to encourage that person to invest, so I just ignore that message because I think that they're the kind of person who will ultimately lose money because they're just basically gambling, and I don't want to be part of the gambling problem.
They've heard it. They've heard a tip.
Yeah, they've
and
heard
that's
a
what
tip.
It is. That's all it is. It's a tip.
It's a ticker to them as well. It's not even a company that does something. It's just, what do you reckon of this one? I don't know where they got it or why. I have no view on whether it'll go up or down short term or long term, but I just know that they're not investing in learning more about the company, about how to invest and how to invest better. On the other hand, I get a lot of people who might have a theory about a certain company. So say they've been following a company closely and they've noticed that the founder has started selling shares. And they might say, "Oh, hey, Claude, I also own shares in PushPay. And, I really like the story and I think they've got great growth. But I noticed that the founder sold down shares recently and he's stepping back from the business. Is this something I should be worried about?" Now, without me necessarily having the answer to that question, I think it's a good question and it shows that somebody's really trying to understand how they can invest better and how they can predict essentially whether a company is going to succeed and fail. At the same time, you have people that are trying to learn more about the valuation side of things. One of the things I've enjoyed with my newsletter recently is, by request, I've just been giving examples of how you calculate things from the primary documents. So the latest few weeks, I've been going through how you calculate the enterprise value of the company, how you calculate the free cash flow value of the company, all from the primary documents, which you therefore can make the necessary adjustments that a data provider might not have automatically made.
So these primary documents are...
That's like annual reports and, official things that are put to the exchange. So the Appendix 3B happens to be where you'll find the recent share count.
Is that what it's called? The Appendix 3B.
That's right,
is the key document to be looking at, is it?
Yeah, so if you want to find the most recent number of shares on issue, the place to look is the most recent Appendix 3B. Appendix 3B is what they have to put out every time they issue more shares. So if you go and look at the annual report for that, it might not have captured the most recent Appendix 3B, essentially. Now, data providers are sometimes quite up to date with these things, sometimes they're not. But one of the examples of when data providers are not to be relied on, and I see beginners fall for this trap time and time again, is Morningstar, for example, will not include escrowed shares in their market calculation. So as a result of that, you get these situations where there'll be some small company, often a relatively new listing, and it'll have some shares, maybe a big chunk of founder shares, 30% of the company, escrowed. Now,
which means they're held aside.
Yeah, they're held aside, and essentially because this has happened at IPO, they're not even listed on the ASX. Now, the data providers, if you really understand data, this is all coming through in a form. There's like listed There's total shares, diluted shares, and also listed shares. Now, I think it's Morningstar or whoever provides CommSec and a lot of the brokers with their data, they just use listed shares in calculating the market capitalization. But
So this is the slices of pizza. How many slices of the pizza
so they're not counting all the slices. Mm-hmm. So what they then say is they'll get the market capitalization wrong when they automatically report that. So if you log into your CommSec and click on the company, you'll actually see the wrong market capitalization there. So if people are just relying on that, and then they're saying, they might look at the company and say, such and such a company, it has this much revenue, maybe it has $3 million in revenue, and according to CommSec, a $30 million market cap, so it's 10 times its revenue. And they might, for whatever reason, decide, that's okay. But they might feel differently if they knew that it was actually 20 times revenue because the market cap was actually 60 million. Mm-hmm. But there's many times where essentially something like that is the case because the market capitalization has not been calculated with all the shares on issue. Now, you get those shares from the 3B. That'll say this many shares, escrow, this many shares, total, etc. But if you just rely on the data provider, you could be way off. And then one day they're going to come out of escrow, they're going to get listed, and the market capitalization will just go up by 30% or double or whatever it is like that. And it always blows my mind to see people investing their money or their family's money, but they don't even know the actual market capitalization of the company they're investing in. And there's so many little tricks like this. And the people that succeed are the people that learn from those mistakes, build up their knowledge base, and are able to then invest with an advantage over other people because there's this endless supply of people who haven't really properly understood what they're doing with investing. So if you're always learning and making sure that you're careful and trying to understand things better and become a better investor, eventually you sort of get better than enough people that you could be classified as a good investor.
I'm just shocked that I've never actually heard this before about the Appendix 3B and the way of finding out. So when you're talking about, are you talking about the market capitalization or the number of slices or the number of slices? So I'm just trying to get clear in my head what you're actually saying here.
So what the 3B will give you the actual accurate number of slices.
Yeah.
Then you can times the slices by the share price, which is essentially the size of each slice.
And that gives you
that gives you the real market capitalization.
Right. Okay.
What some data providers do is they don't consider all of the slices because some of them aren't listed on the ASX. So when they report the automated little market capitalization that you'd see, that's wrong, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like the reason that I bring up this example...
This is insane.
But this is so common. Like because I've dealt with retail investors for so long, they're like, they'll talk to me and they're good and they say, hey, this is what I'm trying to figure out and such a company is this. And I'll say, well, there's your little mistake there. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I know this is because once way back, I made this mistake.
Yeah.
But I learnt from it 10 years ago and I don't make that mistake anymore.
And this is common, is it, that you'll see it all the time?
I see it amongst sort of beginner retail investors.
Yeah.
Almost as long as there's a company that has this escrowed shares and you can, if somebody's sort of, it's like the little bit of knowledge is dangerous thing. Because I think it is a misleading thing.
If you found this podcast helpful, please tell a friend, especially if it's someone who needs to start thinking about investing for their future. You'll be helping them and helping me to keep this show on the road.
Shares for Beginners is for information and educational purposes only. It isn't financial advice and you shouldn't buy or sell any investments based on what you've heard here. Any opinion or commentary is the view of the speaker only, not Shares for Beginners. This podcast doesn't replace professional advice regarding your personal financial needs, circumstances, or current situation.
And thank you for listening to my podcast.
Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.